Wholesaling is simply the assignment of a contract. Now, a lot of people define wholesaling differently. Some people define wholesaling as buying a property and reselling it, buying it under market, reselling it for retail. Some people call that wholetailing. But let's talk about what the traditional definition of wholesaling is in the real estate investing world. There is no real estate dictionary definition of wholesaling. It's kind of an industry term that was made up, kind of a slang term, if you will. So what wholesaling is, when people say wholesaling, that means finding a property under contract, finding a seller that's motivated, getting the property under contract below market value, then assigning that contract to an end buyer, whether they're a cash buyer, a subject to buyer, a lease option, rent to own, flipper, whatever it is that they do. So when you go into the business of wholesaling, again, you're finding a motivated seller, you're finding a property under market value. You need to be able to find properties 65 to 70% below what they will sell for after they are fixed up and repaired, so that the investors, you can make a wholesale fee, and then the investors can in turn make their profit. So what that looks like is if the house will sell for $100,000 after it's repaired, and it's going to take $10,000 to repair it, and you want a $5,000 wholesale fee. So you take that $100,000 minus the $10,000 to fix it, that's $90,000. Then you subtract your wholesale fee of $5,000, that is $85,000. Now you need to be able to buy that property for 60 to 70% of $85,000. So that's going to put you, whatever that math is, in the $40,000, $50,000 range that you have to buy that property for in order for you to make a wholesale fee and for the end buyer to be able to make their fee. Traditional wholesale fees range anywhere from $2,500 to $30,000, depending on, and more, depending on the type of property. If you're wholesaling a house, or if you're wholesaling a commercial property or land, and you can wholesale anything. You can wholesale houses, commercial property, you can wholesale raw land. So the fee needs to be appropriate to where you can make a good fee. The end buyer still has opportunity to make money with what they're doing. So what that looks like is you market for whatever it is you're looking for. Motivated sellers. It can be land, commercial property, multifamily property. It could be houses, whatever that is. You want to. We're going to get into marketing in detail in later lessons, but you market for those motivated sellers. When you find a seller that's motivated and willing to sell the property under market value, we'll talk about how to get there in some sales scripts later in the course. You put that property under contract with to buy. You don't need to put up any deposit, earnest money, or you can use $1 for the deposit. And you have you get a contract to purchase the property in your state. You want to find what's legal in your state, get a legal contract in your state. You want to make sure the contract gives you the right to buy the property and the right to market that contract for sale and to assign that contract to an end buyer. And we put in there and or assign. So if you set up an entity to do business with, which is something that you're going to want to do, we'll talk about that more in the business section. So your entity is We Buy Houses LLC, agrees to buy the house for $100,000. Seller agrees to sell the house for $100,000. You have the right to assign that purchase to that contract to anybody, any end buyer. You also have the right to market that contract for sale. In some states, you can even put that in the MLS, but you want to make sure you understand the rules and the laws in your state to wholesaling. Then you go out and you find your cash buyers. Now, when it comes to wholesaling, you want to start with cash buyers. You want to find legitimate, real cash buyers that have proof of funds. Any legitimate cash buyer will show you proof of funds. So you want to make sure you build a list of cash buyers so that when you go find a property, you know who you're going to go to. And it doesn't take many. When you have a real solid list of cash buyers, you don't need more than maybe 15 or 20 on that list to get started, depending on what it is you're doing. For commercial, it might be more or less. For residential, it might be more or less. Land, it might be more or less. It just depends on your area, how many people are looking for different properties in your area. And the better deal that you have, the more money you can make on your wholesale fee. So it's really up to you to negotiate really good purchases, really good deals. You're not trying to take advantage of anybody. What you're doing is you're trying to solve problems. So as a wholesaler, you're trying to help a motivated seller get their property sold because they don't have the time to put it on the market or the money to fix the property up. So your goal is to have buyers ready to go, and you want cash buyers that are ready to pay cash. If the property doesn't have enough equity in it, then you want a subject to deal, which we talk to in detail later. So you want buyers that buy subject to, you want buyers that buy on lease options and rent to own and terms, as well as cash buyers. So you need to make sure you have all of those buyers in your arsenal. You also want to make sure you have relationships with realtors. So if it's a house that you can't buy or the deal doesn't make sense, but they still need to sell it, you can refer that to a realtor and get a marketing fee from that realtor in exchange for the referral when that property closes. So that's how you wholesale properties. You find a motivated seller, you get the property under contract with the right to assign that contract. You find a end buyer and you assign that contract to the buyer. All of this will take place at the closing attorney's office or the escrow title company's office, depending on your state, how the closings are handled. So you get all the paperwork over to the closing company, title company, closing attorney, and they will handle all of the closing transaction, pay off all of the liens or taxes or any of the closing costs that go through the process, and your wholesale fee, and then the seller gets whatever's left over after all that, if anything. So that's kind of how that goes. You get it all under contract with everybody. You take those contracts to your real estate attorney, closing attorney, and your title company, and you definitely want to sit down with them first, explain to them what you're going to be doing, make sure you have a closing company and a title company that is familiar with wholesaling, familiar with A to C transactions where the buyer comes in first to close and then the money goes to the seller. And then you're in the middle of that transaction. If you have to have what's called a double close, where it's an A to B, B to C, the C buyer comes in first to pay off A, to provide the money for you to pay off the A buyer. So the C buyer comes in first, you're the B buyer, the seller sells you the property, you sell it to the end buyer. So the end buyer comes to the closing with the money first in terms of just how the paperwork works. That money is used to fund your purchase as well as your assignment fee, your wholesale fee. And then the proceeds go to the seller at the end. So that's a double close ABC transaction, and that's how that works. So you want to make sure that you have a closing attorney and or a title company that understands how those processes work, and make sure you understand the rules and laws in your state for wholesaling.